Ambassador Hubbard, you've just come back from Korea. I think you were there a few weeks ago.
Last week, actually. Yes.
Could you tell us a little bit about what the situation is on the ground? We're hearing a lot on news reports and back and forth about the situation between North and South Korea. Can you tell us what the feeling is on the ground there?
I think that, this was a very, very important event. That as Ambassador Han said earlier, this was the first time since the Korean War that the North Koreans had actually attacked South Korean soil and inflicted 2 civilian deaths. So Koreans are angry, upset, frustrated, but there's no sense of panic there. I think they have some confidence, as I do, that the South Korean government under President Lee Myung-bak will react calmly, will take every step to avoid escalation of this conflict. If the North Koreans attack again, there will be a response. But as someone said, we may bomb the point of attack, but we're not going to bomb Pyongyang. I don't see that this potential of a broader conflagration. So if you look at CNN. People in Atlanta must look at CNN. It looks like this is a place in turmoil, but in fact that's not true. In fact,
the brink of war was the phrase.
Exactly. Yeah. The Korean stock market fell the first day, but it was back up the next.
So how does this compare? I asked Ambassador Han this as well, but how does this compare to other events, maybe even that you faced when you were ambassador from 2001 to 2004? Yeah,
I mean, there have been previous, clashes at sea, often in disputed waters between South Korea and North Korea. There was one such attack when I was in Korea, which cost the lives of several South Korean sailors. There was a more serious attack recently in which the North Koreans deliberately sank a South Korean naval vessel. But again, this is the first time the North Koreans have bombarded South Korean territory, and there were 2 civilian deaths. So, everybody is pretty spun up. But I think the response is to, make sure they can respond effectively to a future attack of this kind. South Koreans were very reassured that the United States sent an aircraft carrier battle group to the Yellow Sea for exercises after that. So I think their confidence is coming back. You can't predict what the North Koreans are going to do next, and lately most of the news out of North Korea has been bad.
Well, give us a sense of that, your interpretation of their motivations behind these attacks.
Yeah, well, I think it has a lot to do with the power transition that is going on from Kim Il-sung to his young son, from Kim Jong-il to his young son Kim Jong-un. It seems to follow a North Korean pattern of trying to have the new leader take over from a position of power. So they've displayed their nuclear prowess to the world by revealing a uranium enrichment plant to a group of American scientists. They have shown that they can inflict pain on South Korea by bombarding this island. So that's part of it. I think also they're trying to get our attention. They would like to get us back into negotiations so that they can ask us to pay them some more for better behavior. That side is not going to work. I think they're also expressing some frustration with the South Koreans who under the Lee Myung-bak administration have basically ended the period of sunshine policy and gone back to a more confrontational stance.
What does all this mean for the business person from Georgia who's traveling to Korea to conduct trade and business?
No change of plans. I saw nothing in my week in Korea, and I felt very safe there that suggested any danger. The Korean Peninsula is going to remain tense, but deterrence still works on a broad scale. The North Koreans aren't going to start a war because they know they would lose, and the South Korean side is going to show considerable restraint. Korea is a good place to do business now. They've opened up considerably. This free trade agreement will bring about a much greater opening in Korea, so I recommend that Americans continue investing.
You were around at the outset when the idea for first an investment treaty, but later an FTA came about. Could you tell us a little bit about the motivation behind that And did you expect it to take this long?
Well, I think two things happened. You know, the South Korea suffered badly during the financial crisis of 1997, 98. And as a result of that, and in collaboration with the IMF, they instituted a lot of reforms which had the effect of opening up the domestic economy. Korea went from being, you know, one of the worst places in Asia to do business to being very eager to bring in foreign investment and work with foreign businesses. So when I first arrived in Korea, we were working on a bilateral investment treaty. Nobody had really thought of a free trade agreement yet. We'd run into a few hitches. We'd made some progress on the investment treaty. There was a very odd problem with Korea. They had a quota on the number of foreign movies that any movie outlet could show at any during a period of time, and that had blocked this investment treaty for some time. The South Koreans looked like they were about to ease those restrictions, and we said, why not go for the whole banana? Let's let's have a bilateral investment treaty, but embed that into a broader free trade agreement, and that's where it came from. This is a good treaty. It's a good treaty for service industries, for manufacturing, now for automobiles, for agricultural products, and it's also good for investors because it has the latest and best and latest in investor protections, in investor state procedures, dispute settlement provisions, currency repatriation provisions, et cetera. So you know, this is a good treaty for investors.
And did you expect it to take 7 years or?
Well, it took oddly enough, I think it only took about 2 years to negotiate,
right.
And now it's been sitting around for 3.5 years with actually the renegotiation process moved, I think, amazingly quickly. I think it's a tribute to the good relations between the two countries, but both sides gave a bit on it. But most importantly, I think we got the kinds of provisions that were necessary to bring about support from the U.S. auto industry, from the United Auto Workers. As far as I know, this is the first free trade agreement that any labor union in the United States has supported, and that's saying something. It's not only the UAW, but also the food industry union is supporting it as well.
As far as U.S. companies doing business in Korea, in a country dominated or known for chaebols, these large conglomerates that can span multiple sectors, how does a small business person from the U.S. break into that market, and what are some of the issues that have come up related to small business people in these kinds of bilateral negotiations?
Well, I think one, you need a good Korean partner to be successful as a small business investing in Korea or almost anywhere else in the world. But Korea has traditionally been a highly regulated society. Some years ago, the Korean head of McDonald's in Seoul complained to me that government regulations were such that you couldn't put up the golden arch and you couldn't use red in your storefronts, and McDonald's sort of lives by that, and so it's that kind of thing that have been very difficult, and that's one of the things that the free trade agreement will change. It will go in terms of regulation. It will go from a principle of positive list to a principle of negative list, and a positive list means you can't do anything unless it's specifically provided for. Under a negative list concept that's more like our concept of law, you can do anything that's not prohibited.
Yeah.
And so I think that's going to make Korea much more open and the Korean bureaucracy much easier to deal with.